Joy can be a hard thing to come by, especially in a world where we are constantly bombarded by messages of doom, peril, and fear. Joy can be an ever-fading glimmer just beyond the horizon. Yet, in their wisdom, our sages instituted a mitzvah, a divinely ordained practice of feeling joyful during Sukkot. This Sukkot, many still stand reeling from the harsh realities of our world, experiencing or recovering from the ravages of climate change, health issues, isolation, or mourning the losses of the past years. How do we then practice the mitzvah of feeling joyful as we celebrate the end of this holiday? In a time of difficulty, perhaps even in a time of grief, we can choose to seek joy in our memories. Choosing to feel joy requires us to focus our minds and our hearts on those experiences that have previously brought us joy. At grief's outset, this may seem wrong, unseemly, unwanted, and for good reason. Grief must be felt, must be processed, and must be learned from. The classical rabbis taught, to not mourn at all is impossible, but to mourn excessively is also impossible. To mourn the loss of the sacred temple in Jerusalem, a person may plaster his house, but he must leave a small portion in it without plaster as a memorial. And anyone who mourns for the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem will merit and see its joy. As it is stated, rejoice with Jerusalem and be glad with her. All that love her, rejoice for joy with her. All that mourn for her. Part of the mourning process and Yizkor is not only feeling the heavy weight of sadness once again as we think about our loss, but also commemorating the joy that those whom we've lost brought to us during our lifetimes. This is especially true during Sukkot and even more so today on Shmini Atzeret. Today we end the holiday of Sukkot through a ritual that tells us nothing truly ends. Even as we read of the death of Moses, we immediately read about the birth of the universe. These two events, the end and the beginning of the Torah, are intertwined by our holiday and by our continuous reading of our Torah year in and year out. The sadness of Moses' death before entering the promised land is immediately countered by the joy of the creation of the world and its declared goodness. This too is true with our beautiful sukkah. On this day of Shmini Atzeret, the Feast of Conclusion, we gaze upon this beautiful structure, brings us joy, knowing that soon it too will depart. We need not let our joy be lessened. We need not mourn excessively, but we must acknowledge the way in which all things pass. As we begin our Yizkor service, let us use this time of remembrance to not only feel sadness at the loss of those we loved, but to remember the joys they brought us in life. Let us leave the small portion of our hearts unplastered, acknowledging the sadness and grief, while still celebrating the joy our beloved departed gifted us, and still bring us today as we remember them. Let us be glad with them and rejoice with them, although we mourn them.